Today we're going to be talking about creating Safari tests on iOS, and I'm going to show you guys some tricks about debugging and making it easier to understand what went wrong with the test. We'll also cover element locators a little bit as well. So here you can see I have just a basic IntelliJ project, a Maven project, and you can see I just have a class. I'm calling it Safari Mobile Test, and we can start writing a test. The application we're going to be working on is here, saucedemo.com. This is actually a sample demo application that we maintain here at Sauce Labs, specifically for the purpose of automation. So it's nice because it comes in web, iOS, and Android flavors. So yeah, and we try to design it with most of the best practices for automation, so people can actually see what a well-designed testable application would look like. The very first thing I want to do basically here is we're just going to try to open it up and start a Sauce session, connect to Sauce Labs, and just get a session started. So we're going to come in here and we'll start a new test, create a new test method. Let's call it should open. And so, and let's talk about what's in the POM XML. I've just included it because I think everybody knows how to search for a Maven dependency. There's two dependencies that we need. The first one is Appium. So here's the Appium dependency, and then I also added JUnit as well. Yeah, these are our two dependencies that we're going to be needing for now. And so that'll allow us to basically write our tests. So the very first thing that we're going to need is a capabilities object to connect to a remote session. So I'm going to come here and create, let's call it Appium capabilities, and then we're going to do new mutable capabilities. And so this is just an object that allows us to create a to configure a remote session to any Selenium grid. So now that we have that, the question is, what are we going to enter in here in order to be able to start a remote session in Sauce Labs, right? So maybe some people are familiar with local test execution, and in local test execution, all you do is create like a driver, right? And you do something like a new Safari driver. But because it's a Selenium grid, we always want to operate through a remote web driver. And so remote web driver is actually going to take this Appium capabilities object in here, and then that's how it's going to create that session. So how do we figure out what is possible to pass in here? Well, for that, we have this platform configurator, and here's the URL for that. And you can come here, and we will basically help provide you code to get started. So if I refresh here, you can see you can select depending on which type of automation you're doing. We're obviously doing Appium. So I'm going to select Appium. We're going to select our device. So since we're focused on iOS simulators, we can come here and select our device that we want to automate on. So let's pick iPhone X simulator, for example. So operating system, we can select the latest operating system, and then the Appium version. This is the latest Appium version. And so what you see down here is code that was automatically generated based on the capabilities that we provided. Multiple different programming languages we're doing in Java. So this is what we're going to do. And actually, I saw this today. This code is a little bit outdated because it's still using desired capabilities. And desired capabilities are actually, they're still supported in Selenium 3, but actually in Selenium 4, they're going to disappear because Selenium 4 is moving to W3C protocol. And so instead of desired capabilities, we're using mutable capabilities. And so what you see right here is great, but desired capabilities part is deprecated. So we don't want to use that. So instead, I'm going to come here and I'm just going to paste all of this. And let's just rename this to caps just to keep it simple. And so now you can see we have our mutable capabilities object, and there's several things that are going on in here. First, we're setting the Appium version. Now, usually it's best practice to have the latest version of Appium because you just get all the latest and greatest features, and this is the current latest one. The previous one, I think, was 1.16.0. Then here you can see we're setting a device name, right? Here, iPhone X Simulator. If you were running on any other device name, that would just be a different value passed in here. Device orientation, we actually don't even need that, so we're just going to get rid of that. But of course, if you want to configure that device orientation for your device to start in a specific orientation, you have that capability. The platform version, that's the version of iOS that we're running on. This is currently the latest. Platform name, this is saying this is iOS. If you were doing on Android, you would have Android in here. And of course, you would have the corresponding Android version in there. And then we're going to do a test on Safari. So we need to pass in the browser name. Of course, if you wanted to do it on, well, we're only doing Safari here, so I'm not going to get into that. So this should be enough code for us to configure a session. And actually, no, it's not. So there's other few things that we need here, and that is we need to create our driver. So our driver, as I mentioned before, we're going to do a remote web driver. And the remote web driver is going to take several parameters in here. So first, it's going to take a new URL object, and I'll actually just define that up here. It's going to do a new URL. And this, let's import it. Yep, just importing it at the top. And so this will take this string. I'm just going to type in the string here just to save us time. Let's see, here. And so this string is just configuring the URL for the Selenium hub in Sauce Labs. Of course, if you're doing it locally, you have a different Selenium hub, right? You might have something like hub.selenium.com, and then blah, blah, blah. But here, because we're using Sauce Labs, we're going to pass in our Sauce username appended with our Sauce access key. I'll show you in a moment where to get those. The best practice is they're stored in environment variables. Of course, you can hard code them, but that is not a best practice. And then I'm just missing another piece here, which will be on demand.saucelabs.com, and then port 443. And then we'll also do wd-hub. So you can see this is specific to Sauce Labs right here. If you're doing local, which maybe some people are familiar with local execution, that would be your own, address with your own port number. And so this basically allows us to connect to Sauce Labs because it'll read the environment variables, and then with this URL, and then we're going to pass that in here as such. And so I'm just going to pass it in here. And then the other parameter that it takes is the capabilities that we configure. So there's those caps. And of course, our compiler is complaining the driver doesn't exist. So let's just go ahead and create a class level field, call it WebDriver. There you go. And why is it complaining here? Let's see. Oh, I think it wants a new. There you go. And I'm sure, yeah, this is one of the most annoying exceptions, malformed URL exception that this URL throws. So you've got to add that to the method. So cool. So now we got our remote web driver. Let me show you all where to get your Sauce username and access key if you're not familiar. That would be in your Sauce Labs account. Once you log in. And I need to log in here. I don't know my password. So when you log into your account in here in user settings, you will be able to see your username there and your access key there. And then you just copy it. And you, again, environment variables is best practice. Environment variables best practice because first, you don't check it into source code, which is really nice. And then also in your continuous integration environments, all you have to do, you leave your code exactly the same, but all you have to do is just save those environment variables in your continuous integration servers, and then they can run against the system, and of course not exposing that access key to anyone else in the world. For people that are not familiar with how to set environment variables, if you're on Mac, you can just open up your terminal, and then you can open up your bash profile. And then in there, you can just set your source username and source access key. And then you can also add this command as well, because sometimes IntelliJ actually doesn't read bash profile variables the same way as in the terminal. So sometimes you'll notice if you set them, IntelliJ might not read it. So this will allow this to be set at runtime, and then you might just need to restart your IDE if you're not seeing it here. And the way you can actually test it is just by doing an echo command, source username. And so then if it comes back with your value, you know that it's working. So, okay, fantastic. So that should all be great. Let's give this a shot and see what happens. So it's going. Let's go to Sauce Labs and check out what's going on. Oh, there we go. Awesome. So you can see we've got a session started. It's called unnamed job because we didn't provide the session a name. You can see that it's on Mac 10.15. You can see on iPhone 13.4. And that's all it's going to do for now. We're not doing anything else. And actually, yeah, you can see the device is opened up here. And that's it. It's not going to do anything. Actually, this test is going to fail, getting a 90-second command timeout exception, because what's happening here is we're opening up a session, but we're never stopping a session. And so Sauce Labs is going to keep waiting for a command from our test automation, but we're never going to send it a command. And so then it's the default timeout is 90 seconds. And so then Sauce Labs says, oh, maybe there's something happened to the session, so I'm going to kill it for in 90 seconds so that this machine is not being eaten up for other teams. And so in order to avoid that, we can just create a teardown method. Let's do that up here. Let's do a teardown. And here, all we have to do is check if the driver is null. Driver is not equal to null, because actually sometimes it's possible that when we do new remote web driver, it can be null. So it's important to check that it's not null before doing any kind of operations. And if it's not, we can do a driver.quit, and that will end the session. And we don't need this exception that came automatically. Okay, cool. So let's give this a shot now, and then it'll start and stop the session. And so this should probably be timing out shortly. Not yet. We'll wait for that for timeout while I go to the other test. You can see the other test has started up, and this one is just kind of still hanging. So we'll wait to see the outcome of those in a little bit.